as well. So just giving it a minute and then we will get started. So I know we're 3 minutes in, so to respect everyone's time, we will get started. So welcome again, everyone, to the ones who've joined us in the last couple of seconds to the first cross-chapter, cross-continent dialogue on the role of intermediaries in supporting environment and climate-related SGBs in their post-COVID recovery process. So just very quick housekeeping. If you could assist us in renaming yourself on Zoom to your first name and your organization, that would be great so that we get a sense of everyone who's joining us today. Please do keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. We are conducting this in the meeting format, so it would be great so that we can hear our speakers when they're presenting correctly. If you have any concerns during the meeting in the next couple of in the next hour or so, please do reach out to my colleague Aditi Shankar if you're facing any difficulties, and we can help you sort that out. And of course, please do be patient. If there is any issue, we will look to get that sorted out immediately from our end. And just something for us to keep in mind, one of the main reasons that we have some of these dialogues, which my colleague Sikai will also go into when she's setting the context, is that we're all here to learn and discuss and to basically make connections across continents and see how we can leverage the work that each other's doing to inform us in our program. A quick look at the agenda for the day. We will have Sekai, who leads our South Africa chapter, set a bit of context for both the cross-chapter dialogue as well as the topic for today, post which we will jump into presentations from our three speakers, esteemed panelists who are joining us from South Africa, India, and Brazil. We do have some time slotted for Q&A. Highly encourage participants to keep your questions coming during the presentations as well. Please use the chat function. We at our end will try our best to compile them, get them answered either during the course of this meeting or send them back to the speakers to have them answered and send across a follow-up document as well. Something that we have heard and we've gotten positive feedback on is the element of being able to make connections during these conversations. Which is why we have inbuilt a speed networking component into this cross-chapter dialogue, which, as you can see on the slide, is an optional component. And we would highly encourage those who are here in order to make some of these connections to stay on for those 10 minutes while we conduct some of those rounds for you, post which we'll look to close out the session. So thank you again for joining. And with that, I will hand it over to Sikai.
Much, Cypra, for handing over to me. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all to our very third cross-chapter dialogue. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we're obviously situated in different parts of the world. On behalf of all of the regional chapter managers, we would like to officially welcome you to this chapter dialogue, and we really hope that you're going to be able to enjoy, learn a bit of information about the green economy, but most importantly, foster some collaborations amongst one another. Before I introduce the speakers, I thought that it was important for me to just paint the context as to why we are meeting today and how the green economy fits into the Andes agenda. Also, I am aware that we do have some participants who are joining us for the very first time and are not ANDE members. So I will take a minute to just quickly share a bit more about who we are, and then I'll proceed to introduce our first speaker. So to start off our presentation and introduction section, I wanted to share with you a little bit of who we are. So first of all, ANDE is known as the ASPA Network of Development Entrepreneurs. We are essentially a global network of organizations that propel entrepreneurship in emerging markets. Therefore, this afternoon and evening and morning, we have 3 chapters represented in the room: South Africa, India, as well as Brazil. Now, in 2019, we embarked on the revision of our global strategy. When we revised our strategy, we decided to align our strategy with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. and we have specifically decided to focus on 3 urgent issues throughout the next decade. The first urgent issue is around the issue of decent work and economic growth. The second urgent issue is around gender equality. And the last but most important urgent issue, and why we're here today, is really around climate and environmental action. Climate change is affecting everyone in each of the countries that we find ourselves in, but also around the globe. Thus, the role small and growing businesses play in addressing environmental challenges through their operations, products, and services, together with the supply chains, has become extremely important. Following the success of our first series of cross-chapter dialogues between India, Brazil, and South Africa last year, we have decided to focus on the green economy today. That's why today we are hosting a cross-chapter dialogue that is specifically going to look at the role of intermediaries in supporting the environment and climate-related SGBs in their post-COVID recovery. It is our hope that through this session that we will be having today, you will each have an opportunity to understand the different approaches to COVID-19 recovery for green, small, and growing businesses. Also, we really hope that you'll be able to identify areas where knowledge can be shared, but most importantly, leveraged for collective problem solving. And most importantly, we hope that you'll be able to build partnerships, networks, and collaborations in the green economy. And this is going to be done via our speed networking session that we will have at the end of this cross-chapter dialogue. At this moment in time, I would like to introduce our first speaker. His name is Daniel Kontroki. He is going to be speaking on the intermediary support for environment and climate-related SGBs in post-COVID-19 recovery in Brazil. To introduce Daniel Kontroki, I just wanted to give you a brief background of who he is for those of you that are not familiar with him. He has more than 15 years of experience in supporting entrepreneurship and traditional community development in Brazil. He also co-founded Ayoka Tours, which is the first sustainable tour operator in Brazil. And now he is the director of Climate Ventures. Climate Ventures is a multi-sectorial innovation platform with the purpose of accelerating a regenerative and low-carbon economy. At this moment in time, I'd like to hand over to Daniel. And thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us in this cross-chapter dialogue. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Sakai, and everyone for the invitation. It's a big pleasure for me to be a part of this cross-chapter dialogue. So a little bit of introduction before, can I share? I will share some slides here with you. Hold on just a second. So I would not take a lot of time to talk about climate ventures, so I will skip some of the slides to focus on what we have been doing specifically in one of the projects in the Amazon region with COVID recovery. So just to give you a few introductions. So as everyone knows, we are facing an unprecedented challenge with the climate crisis all over the world. And we believe that it's imperative that we focus on developing a more inclusive, circular, and regenerative economy that is aligned with the Paris Agreement and also with the SDGs. And so we believe in Climate Ventures that one of the ways that we can contribute to developing this new economy is by supporting small and growing businesses that are bringing solution to the climate crisis. So we started Climate Ventures in 2018, so it's very recent, it's 3 years. And we pretty much in this 3 years, this is a little bit of what we've been doing. We have mapped more than 600 small and growing startups that you are bringing positive solutions to these main sectors of the economy, which are the sectors that are more related to the climate crisis here in Brazil. And one of the things that we found when we started, because none of us was a climate expert, we came from the social sector and supporting entrepreneurship and impact businesses, and also working with systems change. So this whole universe of climate was new to us. So we started by mapping what was going on and talking to a lot of leaders, thought leaders, and climate leaders in one of these cross-sector innovation labs. So we ran the first climate innovation lab in Brazil in 2018. And we found that there are many things that needs to be done, but we needed to map what are the acupuncture points, what are the leverage points that we could focus on. And one of these leverage points was, of course, the Amazon forest and everything that has to do with the bioeconomy. So just so you have an idea, different than many other countries where the energy sector is the main responsible for the climate crisis. In Brazil, about 3/4 of our emissions come from forest and land use change, which pretty much is deforestation and also agriculture development. So when we think about supporting startups, and small and growing businesses within the forest sector, we find a lot of challenges. So I will just skip a lot of the slides here and focus on the slides that are connected with the Amazon lab that we are currently running in the Amazon. So this lab, pretty much we are developing in partnership with PPA, which is the platform of partners for the Amazon. And PPI is accelerating and investing in what they call the caboclo startups. So the caboclo is a traditional word from Brazil that pretty much means that different than the regular concept of startups, any business that is creating value while keeping the forest alive, it's an innovation. And so we should consider them as a priority and support them in fostering this new economy. So these businesses, they have a lot of challenges, but some of the main challenges are that some of the startups that are working with forest products such as cocoa and chocolate bars and Brazil nuts and many other products that come from the forest, we're finding a lot of challenges to sell these products outside of the Amazon. The Amazon is pretty much a continent, it's really of continental dimensions. So to send these products to, for example, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, or to export them all over the world, the costs of shipping, handling, and also promoting sales, sometimes it's too much, and then the product ends up being too expensive. So we started this lab just before COVID, and trying to solve some of the challenges related to sales and shipping from these products. And the approach was really the approach of systemic and partnership. And so we brought together a lot of different players that are working and supporting Amazon entrepreneurs, some specialists in sales and specialists in logistics, climate, etc. And we prototype some solutions, what we call the systemic solutions. And one of the prototypes that are really in the center of our attention now is this prototype that it's now changing from a prototype to a movement that is already embracing a lot of different partners. That is the Amazonia em Casa, Floresta em Pé, which means the Amazon in your house, the forest alive, something like that. And in this campaign, we brought together some of the main partners for online sales, for example, Mercado Livre. and also some partners that have a lot of expertise and ships and a lot of equipment to work with logistics all over the country, together with a lot of foundations, institutes that are also supporting this. And pretty much we selected 10 startups that are pretty much, most of them based in the Amazon. And these startups were selected to benefit from certain services that were put together. So pretty much we have every week a container bringing products from the Amazon to Sao Paulo for free. The entrepreneurs can join and then have their products shipping for free. As they sell more and more, they start to pay a small fee until they become a full customer of this logistic company. But this enables these products to arrive in the main markets of Sao Paulo. So these are some of the products that you can take a look. You know, we have flowers and a lot of gems and beers and different kind of products that have a high aggregated value. And this shows a little bit, we cannot show here the name of each of the startups, but this shows some of the startups that were really starting and they have no income before. And then they start with the campaign and the sales started to increase. The sales are in Brazilian reais. And then we can see some other startups that have been deeply affected by COVID. And then, you know, these campaigns and are helping them to grow and recover after that. So I have 3 examples here to show that we are now reaching near the same level as these startups were making income before COVID. So just to bring you a little bit of content about the new study that we are about to publish. So we are mapping now the main challenges and opportunities in Brazil of businesses, sectors that can solve environmental and social problems. So based on this study that will be released in about a month, I brought here some of the main markets that we believe that have to be paid attention and have a lot of potential to develop here in Brazil. So one of them is product traceability. So as we know, the supply chains of sometimes big corporations and agribusiness corporations are deeply connected with deforestation. It's very important that we know where these products are coming from and how the income is being distributed through the supply chain. So this is one of the sectors. And then we, of course, we're mapping solutions, you know, startups and small and growing businesses that have solutions to these kind of markets. And we hope later on this year to develop business rounds to connect these startups with big corporations that are looking for solutions like in this sector. Another big sector is the biodiversity. We believe that we are using a very, very small proportion of the potential that we have of generating value from biodiversity products. We still don't know a lot of the pharmaceutical cosmetics use that, you know, the products from the forest can bring to the world. Just to give you an example, there is the jaburangi, which is one of the leaves from an Amazon tree that is now being used to treat glaucoma. And now Japan is starting to import a lot of this jaburangi from Brazil and develop cosmetics. So there's a huge potential to develop an industry of green businesses based on biodiversity products, not only from the Amazon, but also the Atlantic forest, the Cerrado, and other Brazilian biomes. So the regenerative business, of course, all over the world, we are starting to find out that sustainability is a bit out of fashion now, we believe, you know, because being sustainable is not enough. We are depleting and destroying the world in a very fast pace, and we really need to start promoting businesses that regenerate ecosystems. So mainly in agriculture, we believe through agroforestry that this sector can develop and will develop a lot in the years to come. And of course, environmental assets market. So we have a lot of potential to bring prices to carbon, to water, to a lot of services that are still not being accountable in the economy. So we believe that these sectors will, they are already, but in the next years, there will be a lot of interest from big corporations, from governments, that will start to develop these services that are provided by nature. And this will help also to bring competitivity to some of the agroforestry startups that we have in Brazil that cannot, be profitable yet. One of the big challenges in the regenerative and agriculture businesses is the agroforestry demands a lot of labor, and then sometimes it takes a lot of time for them to reach a break-even point. So if we have the environmental services established, and these properties, can be earning an extra income for the water that they are preserving or the carbon that they are keeping in the ground, this can be a key factor to bring more competitivity to these startups. So I will stop here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will stop here, and I will apologize because I will have to, unfortunately, I have another commitment and I will leave. I have Daniela, that is from our team, our manager here, that will stay until the end and answer all the questions that you guys might have.
Great. Well, first of all, Daniel, before you leave, would like to thank you very much for sharing your insights relating to the green markets and opportunities in Brazil. We have certainly learned a lot. And at this moment in time, I'd like to introduce to you our next speaker for the dialogue, and her name is Tanushri Shukla. Tanushri is a sustainability consultant and social entrepreneur with a lot of expertise in innovative textile waste management practices and systems, as well as social impact generation. Over the course of 10 years, she's worked in a number of capacities, which include business development, communications, strategy, sustainability, and enterprise design across India, the United Kingdom, and the United States. She currently focuses on developing sustainability strategies for enterprises, as well as knowledge and community engagement for the Circular Apparel Innovation Factory, which is Intellicap's industry-led initiative that is building the capabilities as well as ecosystem needed for a transition towards a circular textile and apparel industry in South Asia. Tanushri will share her insights on the intermediary support for environment as well as climate-related SGBs in post-COVID recovery in India. Over to you, and thank you for joining us, Tanushri.
Thank you so much. Really, really happy to be here. Always a pleasure to be at an ANDE event. So yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit today about the organization I represent, which is CAIF, or the Circular Apparel Innovation Factory. And as our name suggests, our focus is really on the textile and apparel industry, and on bringing circularity, bringing sustainability through circular economy to the textile and apparel industry. CIF is, of course, an initiative of Intellicap, which is the advisory arm of the Avishkar Group. So just a little bit of quick update and context on why we focus on textile and apparel. I'm sure many of you are already aware that the textile and apparel industry is perhaps one of the most polluting industries in the world. The issues, of course, start with the fact that we're all consuming and manufacturing far more clothes than we really need to, which is having a knock-on effect on pretty much every aspect of the climate agenda. So the industry really sits at the heart of all of the climate problems that we are facing in the world today, whether it's water, air pollution, and especially the human impact. Now, there's a lot being done globally to address these challenges. We're seeing a lot of innovation, a lot of collaboration between brands and entrepreneurs, a lot of voluntary pledges and commitments that brands have taken to improve their carbon footprint, a lot of tools and frameworks that are being used to measure the footprint, and of course, a lot of really valuable research and knowledge that is coming out of this entire process. What I'd like to focus on, however, is, well, CIF is based in India, and so this is our home country, and this is the place where we know the industry the best. But also we're kind of trying to address the issue of textile and circularity across the global south, because a lot of the countries face similar challenges. And when it comes to the global south, it occupies a pretty unique position in this entire ecosystem and this huge industry, because on one hand, it's a really big consumption hub, a lot of international brands constantly entering the countries on a daily basis. But it's also a really big global production hub. This is where a lot of the clothes of the world are actually manufactured and made. And so countries in the global south kind of face a double burden, in a sense, of the issues of the textile and apparel industry. And there are just a few numbers here to kind of give you a sense of what those issues are. I'm going to go through this quickly because I'm conscious of time, but as Sapriya said earlier, she will be sharing these slides with everyone in case you're interested in knowing more. So what is CIF doing to kind of address these really big challenges, right? My first slide said that we're taking an ecosystem approach to building sustainability in the textile and apparel industry. And what we mean by an ecosystem approach is we're really trying to connect the dots by bringing together all of the stakeholders from within the industry, but also outside the industry, who need to be connected and need to be working collaboratively in order to solve these kind of large, wicked problems. And so all of our stakeholders are kind of listed here, but you'll see that innovators and entrepreneurs are always at the heart of what we do. These are the people who are developing the circular solutions that need the support from funders and investors. These are the solutions that need to be adopted by brands and corporates and scaled, that need policy to be supporting them, that need researchers and academia to be involved in what they're doing. And this is really what we're trying to build at CIF, build this entire ecosystem and connect these dots between all of these entities. Very quickly, the COVID pandemic had a pretty special impact on the textile and apparel sector. And again, there are a few numbers here to give you an indication of how badly the industry suffered. But just to contextualize it to our day-to-day lives, I think when the lockdown started and when the pandemic started, I'm sure all of us experienced, suddenly we really didn't care what we were wearing, right? And we weren't really shopping for clothes so much anymore. We were probably doing a lot of that before the lockdown. And considering millions of people around the world were suddenly not shopping so much and not needing clothes so much, you can imagine the impact that had on people in the supply chain, on smaller enterprises in the supply chain. And this is really the challenge that we kind of were looking at when the lockdown began. Now, as part of the larger kind of Avishkar Group, which is an impact investment company, we really kind of joined hands as, you know, the entire companies in the entire group. We joined hands to kind of give immediate financial support and relief to a lot of our investees and to a lot of the SGBs in our immediate network. But at CIF, we believe that our strength really lies in building long-term impact and thinking long-term. When we looked at the lockdown and when we looked at the impact it had on the industry, we realized that there were a lot of issues already in the textile and apparel industry that had just been surfaced by the pandemic. And what we decided we needed to do really was redesign the industry. If we are looking at ourselves as ecosystem builders, we really wanted to imagine these ideal end state goals and what we want the industry to really look like 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so in discussion with all of our stakeholders, our partners, our governance and advisory board, we decided that this year and perhaps for the next year as well, these are kind of the 4 issues that we want to focus on in order to redesign that industry and reach that end state. Textile waste, plastic, single-use plastic, decarbonizing the industry and providing decarbonization pathways to the industry, and focusing on social inclusion. And these are really the 4 thematic areas around which we are building programs, where we are building those kind of partnerships among stakeholders that I mentioned earlier. What we also decided to do was really move beyond India. The ambition was always there, but it really, I think the pandemic really spurred us to start thinking about moving beyond India and really start addressing many of these common issues that are being faced by other countries in the global south. And these are some of the countries that we are now in talks with various partners to move into, and hopefully after these dialogues, South Africa as well. I'd be very keen to discuss that. And our kind of 4 principles that we decided to keep in mind when designing our programmatic interventions were: what does it really mean to be circular? What does it mean to be sustainable? Everyone has slightly different definitions of these words. And so we decided we need to build that common language and a common vision for what it means to be a circular industry. This circularity has to make business sense. We are talking about a completely commercial industry here, and so it has to make business sense always. That is at the core of everything we do. We have to make circularity seem accessible and within reach. And we need to do this by enabling the private sector to participate in the circular economy and invest in the circular economy. And these are our four kind of key principles. So just a quick snapshot here of the kind of activities that we've been doing. And these are examples. These orange icons are links to more information. And so again, we'd be happy to share this deck with you. But we've been supporting innovators by connecting them with brands and manufacturers and corporates, funders, giving them access to knowledge, network, capital. That's kind of our tagline as an organization. And we've been working with a number of these innovators to actually to implement their solutions on ground with manufacturers and make that business case for circularity. This has, of course, resulted in a lot of knowledge creation through research, surveys we've conducted around the industry, a lot of collateral that has come out, and these are some examples of some of our research and knowledge work. We also see ourselves as a convening platform, as an ecosystem builder. We really specialize in helping the industry convene and members outside the industry convene as well. And we've done this both through in-person events as well as our virtual platform and online events primarily over the last 1 year. And we also primarily function through this mechanism of a working group, where at the moment, we have 2 working groups. Both of these are in operation right now, one which is focusing on policy advocacy and policy interventions needed to bring circularity to the industry. And the program supported by the Loudest Foundation is called Circular Plus, which essentially is about social inclusion in circular business models. So not just environmental impact, but moving towards social inclusion as well. And so when I say ecosystem, this is really what I mean. We are really looking at, as an organization, our ambition is to cover the gamut of all of these activities in a pre-competitive, neutral, industry-facing way. We really believe we are that pre-competitive body that wants to work with other bodies like us. We're really not concerned about competition. We're really here to collaborate and join hands and work with partners to make circularity happen on ground. And I think if this year has taught us anything, it's that collaboration is critical like never before. And so I would love to hear from other people here who are interested in working with us and partnering with us on this very ambitious agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanushree. And we definitely share the same sentiments that collaboration is extremely critical, especially as we build our emerging markets post this COVID-19 pandemic. Also, we are delighted to hear that you've joined hands to think big, as well as set audacious goals towards ideal end states. But most importantly, we're excited to hear that you've expanded your geographic outreach to Africa. At this moment in time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you our final speaker for the day, and that is Dr. Rethabile Malamu. She is one of our steering committee members, specifically in South Africa. She is currently the General Manager for the Green Economy Unit at the Innovation Hub. Before that, she acted in the position of the Chief Director for Sector and Industry Development in the Gauteng Department of Economic Development. She has more than a decade's experience in the green economy sector, spanning from renewable energy, including waste management sectors as well. Also, she has experience in developing public sector strategies and has led a number of green economy strategies in South Africa. She has published numerous reports and academic articles in her field of expertise and was also a finalist in the category of Outstanding Woman of the Year in the Power and Water category at the African Utility Awards. Dr. Rethabile will be sharing with us what intermediary support is being provided for environment as well as climate-related SGBs, specifically in South Africa. Welcome, Dr. Rethabile, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Sakai, for that kind introduction. It's really a pleasure and an honor for us as the Innovation Hub to be here this afternoon. So let me start by greeting my Brazilian colleagues. Good morning to our South African counterparts, and good evening to our Indian colleagues. So as Sakai has mentioned, I come from an organization called the Innovation Hub. Unlike the previous speakers, we actually government. We belong to a regional government called the Gauteng province. And institutionally, we located under one of its agency called the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. And really our aim is to ensure that we foster economic development and the competitiveness of the Gauteng province through innovation. In terms of how we operate, our interventions can be found in the 4 broad areas of smart industries, bioeconomy. We have started a lot of work supporting startups in townships or sort of previously disadvantaged settings and contexts. Where I come from within the Innovation Hub is the Green Economy Unit, which focuses on supporting startups in the clean energy. Daniel, you said yours is mostly around interventions in the Amazon. The reason why we focus on the green economy in South Africa is that we are a seriously fossil-intensive economy. 90% of our energy, whether it's transportation or electricity, comes from fossil fuels. So making sure that there are innovations and interventions in the energy space is very important to us. And of course, related to Tanushree, as issues around waste management and circularity. And one of the biggest problems in the African context and in the context of the slums and informal settlements is water access to water and sanitation. And so as an enterprise development initiative or incubation program, those are the sectors that we focus in. We were established in collaboration with the World Bank, and therefore we belong to a network of what we call the Climate Innovation Centers, and ours is called the Climate Innovation Center South Africa. And there we provide business development support for startups. The World Bank has an InfoDev department that established 7 CICs. I think there is an 8th one now in Nigeria. But I think what has been catalytic to our work as the Innovation Hub or the Climate Center, Innovation Center South Africa is the injection that we got from the Green Fund that was managed by Environmental Department in South Africa. That really, through this grants, we were able to leverage, of this 15 million rand that we received from our Environmental Department, 10 million of it went straight to our entrepreneurs as seed funding. And they've been able to leverage an additional 70 million rands in the past 3 years. So some of these support is quite catalytic. So this just reiterating where some of our sister organizations are located around the world. A number of them are in the continent, with the exception of the Caribbean and Vietnam. So the way we work within the Innovation Hub is that we in it for a long haul with some of these startups. So we're not there for a year or two. We walk the journey with them for about 4 years. And for some companies, it's actually a lot longer than that. We have categorized our incubation program into 2 phases. The first one is what we call factory. And really the objective of the factory phase of the incubation program is that they get out of that a phase with a sale. They need to have made at least their first sale. Obviously, you need to finalize your business plan before you make your first sale. And you need to be legally compliant, and you have to have a commercial prototype. The core phase is where really we are ensuring that you scale and become sustainable as a business. So in South Africa, there are numerous of challenges that face startups in general, but that face startups in the climate environmental space a lot more. And I thought we should just highlight a few of them and really gauge whether our colleagues in other jurisdictions are facing similar challenges. And that one of them is that we're working in a highly regulated space, and most of the startups that we work with do not understand that, right? But alongside these regulations are opportunities. You'd hear that most countries are talking or looking towards the green economy and clean tech as one of the ways of reviving their economies post-COVID. So it's very important for us to make sure that our interventions help those that have ideas in this space to understand the regulatory framework within which they operate. Funding goes hand in hand with access to market, and funders do not have appetite to support companies in this space. But I think what we do as an intermediary is we have established great relationships with funders so that we can help startups who do not have that social capital approach a funder a lot easier. And of course, some of them have great ideas, but they want to go at it on their own. And what we try to steer them towards is that if you're going to really grow this business, you need to make sure that you build a strong team. But maybe going back to how we have been supporting these companies during this very difficult time, as the organizers requested us to reflect on, is that most of how we used to mentor these companies used to be one-on-one, face-to-face, whether with us as incubation programs or some of our partners, mentors that we work with, as we really valued that human interaction. COVID has taken that away from us. So we've literally moved most, if not all, of our mentoring online, virtually. But what that has also done, one of the benefits is that we have started initiatives around group mentoring. So we identify a topic, make sure that we invite an expert who can speak on a topic of concern for some of our companies. And an additional benefit to that is we are able to even reach some of the companies that are not incubated with us, because there's a set process that one needs to go through before they become our incubatee. But that has allowed us to have a broader reach, which I think is one of the benefits. I think, Daniel, you talked about market intelligence and gathering, which is important if you're going to support companies in this space. So one of the ways in which we are supporting companies is to develop intelligence and share some of the intelligence that have been developed by our ecosystem partners, so that companies and startups that are already in the space know how to diversify, but those that would want to get into the space understand where the opportunities are. We are now promoting, making sure that our enterprises embrace, I think technology, for a lack of a better word, because you'll have an energy company that would depend on various ways of attracting clientele. And now we are talking machine learning as an instrument to try and recruit potential clients. So we host workshops. For instance, this past week, we were able to get an expert on how machine learning can help any enterprise, especially those that work in this climate smart environmental spaces. Quite useful. It helps with their process efficiency and cuts on their overheads. And of course, and lastly, I'm probably running out of time, is that in addition to these direct interventions, we feel that unless policy and strategy of government changes, right, the opportunities for addressing the environmental challenges, but also building startups, will be limited. So what we do is we make sure that, fortunately for us, we are government, so we can lobby our government counterparts to ensure that when they develop these policies, they take our startups into consideration. And right now, where we are looking towards green economy transition as an economic stimulant into the future post-COVID, we need to make sure that that doesn't just favor the established business. We take into consideration the startups who create most job opportunities and deal with some of the societal challenges that I believe we face as the three countries. So colleagues, that will be it from me. Obrigado. G. Shukriya. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Tabi, for sharing the challenges which are faced by climate smart entrepreneurs in South Africa, also for highlighting the opportunities and solutions which some of our interventions can focus on. Last but not least, well done for establishing great relationships with funders and also just highlighting the work that you've done as a government agency to support entrepreneurs during this pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment in time, I would like to thank all of our speakers for joining us today. Thank you very much for sharing what your organizations are doing. We can certainly see that you are building the green economy and you're also contributing towards supporting our ecosystem. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to just come and impart this knowledge on all of the participants. At this moment in time, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Tendai to run with the Q&A session of this cross-chapter dialogue. Over to you, Tendai.
Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning and good evening once again. So we do have just a couple of questions that which I will direct to our speakers, which we have received. And the first one is that I can direct the question to would be to Daniela, who's going to speak on behalf of Daniel. And the first question that I have for you, Daniela, is where would you like to get more support or more knowledge in this recovery and building back process?
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you. I think like a quick answer, what we're struggling here is the partnerships to build knowledge on these impact assessment tools and all these parts of how do we measure the impact that the startups are getting and how we track them during the time so we can assure that they're having a positive impact. They keep having positive impact during the time. This is like a big project that we're focusing now. So I think that would be amazing if we have some partnership and understand who is doing this, among a lot of other things, of course, but this is something that I can say here.
Hopefully during our speed networking time, you will be able to foster some partnerships, or you will be able to actually connect with people, and people would love to connect with you as well. So the next question that I have is for Tanushri. Tanushri, I have a question that says, how can intermediaries help bridge the gap between the small and growing businesses and corporates to mainstream circular solutions? And a follow-up is, what is your organization doing in this regard?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that intermediaries like CIS and like many of the organizations here play a very, very critical role in helping bridge this gap. What we found, especially in India and neighboring countries, is while innovations do exist, their discoverability is really hard for corporates. There's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done. Will this solution work at scale? What is it going to cost me? What is it going to cost me in a different region, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that an intermediary really plays that role of operating at a pre-competitive basis. So we really go in completely neutral, not aligned with any particular brand or organization, and we're able to very neutrally assess solutions and really stitch together those partnerships that are going to be meaningful, that are not going to enable greenwashing, of which there is a lot in the textile and apparel space. And also make sure that, I think one of the big roles that we intend to play, and why knowledge is a big piece of what we do, is make sure that whatever we are learning from a particular partnership or pilot is getting proliferated across the industry, and so that everyone is kind of growing together. For a lot of brands and organizations, having access to a particular entrepreneur or a solution or an innovation becomes a competitive advantage. But we're really not in the game of competition at all. We're really about taking what we learn from this and passing it on to everybody. And I think that's the big role that people like us who sit in between really play. And as I mentioned, the second part of your question, this is really essentially what we at CIF are doing. The themes that I spoke about, each of them align with a particular program that we are developing. These are long-term 5 to 10-year horizon kind of programs, where we're really looking at constantly connecting with new innovations and solutions, connecting them with the market, providing them that enabling environment with capital access and investor readiness, and really helping this entire industry kind of grow and get on the same page.
Thank you very much. That was very clear. And the next question that I have is actually for Dr. Tabile. The question is, what is the role of intermediaries in policy change, as there will definitely be a need for state and policy support for small and growing businesses to thrive in this space?
No, thank you. Thank you very much for that very important question. I think I touched on the fact that it's important for intermediaries like ourselves to lobby government. And for you to be able to lobby and sit on tables, you need to have established relationships. So I think intermediaries need to treat government as their friend. And I know in South Africa, that's not always the case. There's a certain perception of government institutions, but they have a critical role. So that information and some of the intelligence that you have that some of our government institutions do not have is critical and important for developing sound policies that address real challenges. So I'd like to say, make government your friend, and government is a big animal, it's a huge machine, and it's just not one department or the other. It's a number of departments and number of agencies. The last thing, perhaps, Tendai, that I would like to mention is that intermediaries have some level of convening power, especially if you are not a government entity. You are able to come on the table as a neutral player that is able to, you're not an entrepreneur, you're not necessarily interested in their funding, although their funding can help advance, the startups that you support, but you're not there looking for millions and millions of rands. And therefore, your voice is very important. And so, yeah, let's collaborate with government institutions and with one another and try to leverage from our individual strengths. So, yeah, thanks, ma'am. That would be my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is the reason for these cross-chapter dialogues, that we can actually collaborate with one another, learn from one another, and just see how we can strengthen each other. We can be in India, South Africa, and Brazil, but as we are seeing, we are facing almost the same challenges, and we are seeing how best we can actually collaborate and work towards a better future for ourselves. The final question that I have is for Tanushri, and the question is, what is CAFE's role in advocating for circularity from a consumer angle, given that influence demand for circular products?
Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we don't work, we're not a consumer-facing body. What we're really looking at is all of the non-glamorous stuff behind the products, right? So our focus is on the dyes, on the finishes, on the processes, on the water consumption, and all of that stuff that isn't really interesting to a lot of people. We spend our entire time looking at supply chains. But I think that in an industry where ultimately all of this results in a product that sells to a final consumer, The role we are playing is in making sure that the products that are reaching the consumers are as green as they claim to be, or as green as they can be. And so while it isn't a direct kind of influence, we are hopefully, kind of the people behind the scenes enabling the industry to bring fair and greener products to the consumers.
Thank you very much. And then lastly, there was a question from Patricia to Daniel. And I don't know if Patricia saw that Daniel actually answered the question in the chat. So Patricia, if you can please go back into the chat, you will find the answer to your question. Before he dropped off, he actually answered your question. It has come to the end of our question and answers, but if any of you have any more questions and answers, please feel free to reach out to anyone from the ANDE team, and we will definitely direct them to our speakers and get you the answers that you need.
Speakers, Dr. Retabidi, and also Tanushi and Danielle and Daniela. Thanks for joining our cross-chapter dialogue, and especially a big thank for all the ANDE team, Cypriot, Tendai, and Rebecca especially, and everyone else. Thank you. Have a wonderful day or night or evening, and see you soon.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers all. Thank you. Cheers.